What if I told you the most devastating event in Tamriel's history, the Oblivion Crisis that nearly destroyed the world, wasn't an attack at all? What if the Emperor himself planned the whole thing? What if Uriel Septim VII deliberately orchestrated the deaths of his own sons, burned cities to the ground, and unleashed literal hell on his own empire, all according to plan? That's not fanfiction, that's what the evidence actually shows, when you stop accepting the official story and start asking the hard questions. We've been told a heroic tale of tragedy and salvation, but when you examine what actually happened, the Emperor's own words, his actions, his documented history of eliminating threats, it all points to something much darker and far more brilliant. This is the story of the greatest conspiracy in Elder Scrolls history, and it starts with a simple question nobody bothered to ask. Why wasn't the Emperor surprised? Let's start with the official version of events, the story written in the history books, taught in the Imperial City, and accepted as gospel truth by pretty much everyone in Tamriel. According to historians like Praxis Sacorum, here's what really happened. On the 27th of last seed, 3rd Era 433, a fanatical Daedra cult called the Mythic Dawn launched a surprise attack. Kill Emperor Uriel Septim VII and every single one of his heirs. The history book The Oblivion Crisis describes it as complete chaos. The assassins first attacked the Emperor in the White Gold Tower. While the Blades held them back, the Emperor made his way down to the dungeons, to a secret escape route built into one of the prison cells. It was a desperate flight, a last-ditch escape, the Empire's greatest protectors overwhelmed. It's painted as a perfect ambush that caught everyone by surprise. And it worked. The Mythic Dawn murdered all of Uriel's known sons in a single coordinated strike. But why? The Septim bloodline maintained a covenant with Akatosh, a metaphysical barrier between our world and the hell dimensions of Oblivion. No Septims meant no barrier. The cult's plan was simple: kill the family, break the barrier, and unleash Mehrunes Dagon on Tamriel. So there's the dying Emperor, cornered in a prison tunnel with assassins closing in. In a moment of pure desperation, he turns to you, a random prisoner who just happens to be in a cell along his escape route. He hands you the Amulet of Kings, the most sacred artifact in the entire Empire, and tells you to deliver it to the Blades. It sounds hopeless, except hang on, the Empire has one last chance. Joffrey, the Grand Master of the Blades, reveals a secret. Uriel had an illegitimate son, a priest named Martin, serving in the city of Kvatch.
Now it seems that this illegitimate son is the heir to the Septim throne, if he yet lives. His name is Martin. He serves Akatosh in the chapel in the city of Kvatch, south of here.
One last heir. One last chance to save everything. But you're too late. While Martin sits in his chapel completely unaware he's the last Septim, Oblivion gates start tearing open across the continent. Kvatch is hit first, and the city burns. Daedra slaughter everyone who can't escape. The few remaining survivors paint a nightmare.
It was too much. Too fast. We were overwhelmed. Couldn't even get everyone out. There are still people trapped in there. Some made it to the chapel, but others were just run down in the streets. The Count and his men are still holed up in the castle. And now we can't even get back into the city to help them, with that damned Oblivion gate blocking the way.
From there, we know the rest. You close the Kvatch gate, rescue Martin, hunt down the Mythic Dawn's leader, Mankar Cameron, and recover the amulet from his twisted paradise. The final battle happens in the Imperial City itself when Mehrunes Dagon, an actual god, steps into the mortal world. With no other option, Martin Septim makes the ultimate sacrifice. He shatters the Amulet of Kings, transforms into the avatar of Akatosh, defeats Dagon in divine combat, then turns to stone forever. The Septim dynasty ends, the 3rd Era is over, but Tamriel is saved. It's perfect, it's heroic, epic tale wrapped in tragedy and divine intervention. Except for one problem: this story is a complete lie. If you actually look at what Uriel Septim said and did in his final hours, nothing about his behavior makes sense for a man under surprise attack. Unless he wasn't surprised at all. Unless every single step from the prison cell to his own assassination was part of the plan he'd been building for decades. So the official story wants you to believe that Uriel Septim VII was a victim, an old man blindsided by a conspiracy he never saw coming. That's the foundation of the entire narrative. There's just one massive problem with that story. Uriel Septim VII was one of the most powerful seers in Tamriel's history. For 65 years, this man ruled the empire, guided by prophetic dreams. This is a well-documented fact of his rule. His visions warned him about Jagar Tharn's betrayal during the Imperial Simulacrum. His dreams later guided him to send a specific prisoner to Morrowind, which led to the defeat of Dagoth-Ur and fulfilled the Nerevarine prophecy. Here's the crucial detail. Uriel didn't need to see every step the Nerevarine would take. He understood the metaphysical framework of the prophecy well enough to position the right agent to resolve it. The biography Life of Uriel Septim VII asks the key question. How much did Uriel know about the prophecies of the Nerevarine, and how did he learn of their significance? And the answer seems to be he knew enough to act strategically. He didn't have a frame-by-frame script of future events, but he had something more useful: pattern recognition. He himself said he chartered his course by the cycles of the heavens, astrological divination, identifying the critical junctures where history could be shaped. So when the game opens with him saying this,
"For 65 years I've ruled as Tamriel's emperor. But for all these years, I've never been the ruler of my own dreams. I have seen the gates of Oblivion, beyond which no waking eye may see."
he's recounting a vision he's already witnessed, a man who's watched the entire Oblivion Crisis play out in his prophetic dreams. He's not predicting the future, he's narrating it. And that completely changes how we interpret what happens next. Watch his behavior during the assassination attempt. His blades are fighting and dying around him. There are mythic dawn assassins in the tunnels actively hunting him. Any normal person fleeing for their life would be panicking, shouting orders, moving with urgency. But Uriel Septim does none of those things. He calmly walks through the prison corridors like he's taking a stroll through the palace gardens. His guards are frantic, but he's serene.
"I've served the Nine all my days, and I chart my course by the cycles of the heavens."
Then comes that moment that shatters the official narrative completely. The Emperor reaches your cell. He stops his entire escape party. With assassins hunting him and time running out, he walks directly up to your cell door, looks at you and says,
"You. I've seen you. Let me see your face. You are the one from my dreams. Then the stars were right. And this is the day."
This was not a random encounter. Think about what just happened. Uriel wasn't surprised to find a prisoner in his path. He was actively looking for you. The entire escape through the prison was a mission to reach your specific cell and confirm your identity. He needed to see your face because he'd seen it before in his prophetic dreams. And if you need even more proof that this was planned, listen to what he tells his own bodyguards.
"Assassins attacked my sons, and I am next. My blades are leading me out of the city along a secret escape route. By chance, the entrance to that escape route leads through your cell."
By chance. By chance, the entrance just happens to lead through your cell. This is a lie, a calculated, deliberate lie designed to keep his blades from asking questions. Because how could he possibly ever explain the truth? Gentlemen, excuse me, I need to deliver this sacred artifact to a metaphysical anomaly I've located in the prison, and then I need to get myself killed to trigger a continental catastrophe that will eventually save the Empire from a threat you don't even know exists yet. His guards would have thought he'd lost his mind, so he lied. The prison cell wasn't a waypoint on his escape route, it was the destination. And this raises the biggest question of all. What makes you so special? And more importantly, what threat did Uriel see that required him to orchestrate his own assassination? People assume the mythic Dawn and Mehrunes Dagon were the threat Uriel foresaw. They were the crisis he weaponized against a far more dangerous enemy, an ideology that would emerge from the chaos he created. The real threat, though, was an elven supremacist philosophy that believed the mortal world was a cosmic mistake needing to be unmade. And Uriel Septim, with his prophetic abilities and decades of geopolitical experience, would have seen it rising like a tidal wave on the horizon. Let me explain to you what the Thalmor actually want, because it's way worse than conquest. According to texts like The Great War, their ultimate goal is to deactivate the towers that stabilize reality itself. They want to dissolve creation and return to a state of primordial divinity. They see mortality as a prison, humanity as descended from Lorkhan, the traitor god who created that prison. This isn't a war for territory, rather it's a war for existence itself. During the Third Era, the Thalmor weren't in power yet. They were a fringe element in the Somerset Isles, a radical group among competing kinships. The Thalmor capitalized on their success during the crisis to seize total control. They took credit for saving Somerset from the Daedra, eliminating anyone who questioned them. Then they used the chaos of the post-crisis interregnum to establish their dominion. They went from nobodies to rulers because of the Oblivion Crisis. But here's what Uriel would have seen with this strategic foresight. This ideology was rising regardless, and the Empire had a fatal vulnerability that made it the perfect target. The covenant with Akatosh, the magical barrier protecting Tamriel from Oblivion, was entirely dependent on the Septim bloodline. One family, one bloodline, and Uriel at the end of his reign had no clear strong heirs, just an unknown bastard son living as a provincial priest. This single point of failure was an invitation for catastrophe. Uriel foresaw that this ideology would eventually target the Covenant. Rather than wait for his enemies to choose the time and place of that attack, he decided to trigger the collapse himself, break it on his own terms, control the narrative, ensure the right players were in position, and guide the outcome. The Oblivion Crisis was surgery, controlled demolition of a failing system to build something better. He would sacrifice his dynasty to neutralize the enemy's primary path to victory. But to pull this off, he needed a scalpel. He needed someone to actually execute the assassinations and trigger the invasion. Which brings us to a much darker question. Did Uriel manipulate the Mythic Dawn? Here's where we need to talk about Archbishop Calexis, and this is where things get really disturbing. If you want to understand what Uriel Septim VII was capable of, you need to know about Archbishop Calexis, because it's the smoking gun that proves he had both the ruthlessness and the intelligence network to manipulate the Mythic Dawn. Calexis was Uriel's illegitimate son, not some random bastard. He'd risen to become Archbishop of the one of the most powerful positions in the imperial cult. Then rumors started spreading. According to Words of Philosophy, Calexis believed the gods were angry with his father. He started advocating for a full-scale rebellion to establish a theocracy over the empire. Calexis mysteriously disappeared. The strong implication is that Uriel had him eliminated by the Imperial Guard, specifically by a former blade named Lady Elena Bennock, who was known for many secret missions for the Emperor. Think about what that means. Uriel Septim VII had his own son assassinated by his secret intelligence service because that son posed a religious political threat to imperial stability. If he'd kill his own son to neutralize a threat from within the state-sanctioned imperial cult, why wouldn't he manipulate an external, heretical cult like the Mythic Dawn? After his imprisonment by Jagar Tharn, Life of Uriel Septim VII tells us his entire method of rule changed. He relied on clandestine manipulation of affairs behind the scenes, primarily through the agencies of the various branches of the Blades. This wasn't an occasional thing. This was a defining strategy for the second half of his reign. Clandestine manipulation through the Blades. We know he had a vast intelligence network. We know he was willing to eliminate religious figures, even his own family, when they threatened the Empire. The Mythic Dawn didn't need to be created from scratch. They just needed to be allowed to fester, monitored, and subtly guided. Imperial agents could have infiltrated the cult, fed their leaders messianic delusions, then ensured their inevitable attack happened exactly where and when Uriel's plan required it. And here's the really brilliant part. Cameron was the perfect target for manipulation. His ideology laid out in the Mythic Dawn commentaries was complex, esoteric, and utterly predictable. Cameron believed Mundus was a lost plane of oblivion and Mehrunes Dagon was a prince of liberation. His goal was neonimbiosis, spiritual rebirth, and the transformation of reality. But to achieve this, he needed the Amulet of Kings. His entire plot revolved around that artifact. To a master strategist like Uriel, an enemy with such a specific artifact-dependent plan becomes controllable. By controlling access to the amulet and its bearer himself, Uriel controlled the timing of the entire crisis. The commentaries are full of riddles, hidden meanings, and acrostic ciphers pointing to the cult headquarters. This is a group obsessed with with conspiracy, exceptionally vulnerable to manipulation. An Imperial agent posing as a prophet could easily feed Cameron revelations that guided his actions along Uriel's predetermined path, all while Cameron believed he was following divine will. The Mythic Dawn served as the Emperor's unwitting blade. But here's what I want you to think about. We've established that Uriel could manipulate the cult and trigger the crisis, but how do you control an actual Daedric invasion? How do you guarantee the plan doesn't spiral into total chaos? The official story treats you as a lucky nobody who happened to be in the right place at the right time. But Uriel Septim didn't deal in luck. He dealt in prophecy, strategy, and metaphysical warfare. When he says you are the one from my dreams, he's not making small talk. He's confirming the deployment of his ultimate failsafe. To understand why you matter, we need to talk about what a prisoner actually is in Elder Scrolls metaphysics. The living god Sotha Sil explained it best. According to him, the entire universe is bound by causality. Every event is the result of a previous action. Everyone from peasants to gods is trapped by this chain of cause and effect. They're all prisoners of fate, locked into predetermined paths. Except for one type of being, the prisoner.
The prisoner must apprehend two critical insights. First, they must face the reality of their imprisonment. They must see the determinative walls, the chains of causality that bind them to their course. I have, but I fall short of the second insight. The prisoner must see the door to their cell. They must gaze through the bars and perceive that which exists beyond causality, beyond time. Only then can they escape.
A prisoner is a paradox, a person with no fixed past, no predetermined destiny, absolute free will in a universe where free will shouldn't exist. They're walking reality glitches, agents of change who can look at prophecy, say no, and actually make it work. The Archmage Zurin Arctis put it this way: the prophecy is just possibility until a hero, a prisoner, chooses to act. That choice transforms potential futures into definitive past. Sotha Sil said it even more directly.
The prisoner wields great power, making reality of metaphor.
Think about every Elder Scrolls game. You always start as a prisoner with no clear background. The Nerevarine was a prisoner. The hero of Kvatch, you are a prisoner. The last Dragonborn centuries later starts in chains, headed for execution. Uriel Septim, for all his prophetic power, was still bound by fate. His dreams showed him the future, but they also showed him it was locked. He could see the doom coming, the Empire's destruction, but he couldn't change it through normal means. No political moves or military preparations could alter this timeline. To break a locked timeline, you need someone who exists outside of it. Uriel's entire plan of sacrificing his own sons, activating the Mythic Dawn, and orchestrating his own execution was one elaborate delivery system for a metaphysical weapon. Its purpose was to find one person in all of Tamriel who could defy destiny and place into their hands the tools to rewrite the future. Now here's the genius of using a prisoner. There's the ultimate contingency plan. Think about every moment where your plan could have collapsed. When the Mythic Dawn attacked Waynon Priory and stole the amulet, a normal agent might have failed to track them down. But you didn't. When you needed to find the cult's secret shrine, survive their ambush, enter Mankar Cameron's paradise, retrieve the amulet from a Daedric realm, any normal hero would have died. But you didn't. When a great gate threatened Bruma and nearly killed Martin before the final confrontation, someone had to enter the Deadlands and close it. You did. At every stage where chaos threatened to derail the Emperor's carefully laid plan, you were the force that pushed it back on track. Uriel didn't choose a champion. He unleashed a metaphysical force. By placing the Amulet of Kings into the hands of a prisoner, he bound his rigid strategy to an agent of pure adaptive potential. You were the sentient failsafe, the living guarantee that no matter how chaotic the invasion became, the key pieces would reach their destination. Which brings us to the final act, the moment everything was building toward. Martin Septim's sacrifice wasn't a desperate prayer answered by a distant god. It was a ritual with clear precedent, executed exactly as planned. The climax of the official story is Martin's heroic improvisation, a last-minute miracle that saves the day. But when you understand the deeper metaphysics at play, you realize it was anything but improvised. Let's start with what the Amulet of Kings actually is. According to the Amulet of Kings book, it's the primary token of the covenant between Saint Alicia and Akatosh. The central gem is described as an immensely powerful soul gem, containing the soul of Alessia and, by extension, the soul of all her dragonborn successors. One theory suggests that the red diamond was formed from a crystallized drop of the heart of Lorkhan's blood, the literal heart of creation. This makes it potentially the most powerful soul gem ever created, containing the combined soul power of an entire dynasty of demigods fused with the essence of the mortal plane itself. So when Martin shattered it, he didn't just break a piece of jewelry, he unleashed a massive quantum of divine, time-aspected energy. The idea of a mortal achieving godlike power through ritual isn't unprecedented in Elder Scrolls lore. There's a process called mantling, walking like a divine being so completely that the universe can't distinguish between the two, allowing the mortal to assume the god's role and power. You've actually seen this happen. In the Shivering Isles, the champion of Cyrodiil mantles Sheogorath, becoming the new Prince of Madness. Mantling works best when there's a void to be filled, when the god is absent, weakened, or in a state of cessation. There's an even more direct historical parallel, the Nerevarine. The climax of that prophecy involved using Kagranak's tools to destroy the heart of Lorkhan, defeating the false god Dagoth-Ur, and reshaping Morrowind's entire spiritual landscape. The ritual destruction of a divine power source to defeat a god and establish a new spiritual order. Martin's sacrifice followed the exact same pattern. In the moment that Mehrunes Dagon manifested physically on Nirn, a metaphysical void opened. The old covenant had failed. The barriers were down. Martin, the last of the dragon blood, shattered the amulet and released centuries of accumulated divine power. In that moment, in the presence of the time god's greatest enemy, he filled the void and mantled Akatosh. He became a temporary avatar of the dragon god of time. This was a metaphysical equation being solved on the mortal plane rather than a prayer answered from heaven. And the result is that the avatar returned to stone, a permanent fixture in the Temple of the One, forever sealing the breach. This transformation defeated Dagon while forging a new covenant, one that didn't depend on fragile mortal bloodline. The old system, vulnerable to assassination and ideology, was replaced with a permanent, incorruptible divine seal. The Oblivion Crisis was engineered to force exactly this outcome. Uriel traded the Septim dynasty for the external protection of Tamriel. He sacrificed a family to save a world. Think about that symbolism. The Thalmor claimed the gods abandoned the world and humanity is an abomination. Uriel engineered a crisis that ended with a man literally becoming a god to save his people. The stone dragon standing in the Imperial City isn't a tombstone, it's the ultimate rebuttal to everything the Thalmor believe, frozen in stone forever as proof that the divine still protects Mundus. When you take a step back and look at the full picture, the Oblivion Crisis transforms from tragedy into something far more unsettling, a triumph of ruthless, brilliant strategy. Uriel Septim VII wasn't a victim caught by surprise. He was a seer who saw the doom of his age, an ideology rising that would target the Empire's metaphysical foundation. He looked at the Covenant, dependent entirely on his failing bloodline, and recognized it as a fatal vulnerability. So he chose to sacrifice the present to save the future. He orchestrated a controlled demolition of his own dynasty. He had already proven he'd eliminate religious threats, even his own son, to protect imperial stability. Manipulating the Mythic Dawn was an extension of that same ruthless calculus. He used them as an unwitting tool while wielding the Oblivion Crisis as a continental crucible. He sacrificed his sons, his life, and his dynasty to achieve multiple objectives. He didn't just save the Empire from Mehrunes Dagon. He gave it a new mythological foundation powerful enough to sustain it through the dark centuries ahead. The stone dragon in the Imperial City stands as proof that humanity is worth saving, that the divine still protects them, that the Thalmor's ideology is fundamentally wrong. Uriel Septim VII wasn't the last emperor of the Third Era. He was the first architect of the Fourth, a prophet strategist who played a game with gods and destiny, and won at a cost that Orthodox history refuses to admit. The real question is, was he a monster or a hero? Can you even separate the two when the stakes are that high? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. I genuinely want to hear where you stand on this. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for diving down in this rabbit hole with me. And if you enjoyed this theory, hit the like button and subscribe because I've got more conspiracies lined up that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about your favorite games. And click this video because I did a theory on how Red Dead Redemption 2's gang is a lot more than meets the eye.